Hi, my name is Moonpire, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Portuguese, who are one of the best civilizations in Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition right now. Now, this is fantastic because the Portuguese are one of the easiest civilizations to boom with. So, for beginners, the Portuguese are a fantastic civilization to learn. In this video, we'll be covering three primary topics. Firstly, we'll take a look at some of the unique aspects of the Portuguese. We'll take a look at a traditional treaty deck for the Portuguese, and finally, we'll look at how to boom with the Portuguese. Now first, let's get started with some of the aspects that sets them apart from their competition. Firstly, every single time you age with the Portuguese, you get a free town centre wagon. This is fantastic because it allows you to pump out villages much faster than your opposition, where every other civilization is only able to build town centers from the third age onwards. When you age to the second age, you get a free town center. The second advantage to playing the Portuguese is that Portuguese villagers gain a 5% increased gather rate when gathering from hunts or berries. But you don't want to be gathering from berries because if you're unaware, berries have a base gather rate of 0.67 food per second, where hunts have a base gather rate of 0.84 food per second. So hunts have a base gather rate of 0.84 food per second. 5% of this equates to 0.042 food per second, which means with this buff you're getting an extra 0.042 food per second per villager. Now an extra 0.042 food extra per second equals an extra 2.52 food per minute. Now, with approximately 15 minutes of gathering from hunts at 2.52 extra food per minute with approximately 30 villages, this will equate to around 1,000 extra food. Now, it's important to note that it's not going to be 30 villagers gathering for 15 minutes straight because you slowly increase the number of villages you have, and this is simply a rough estimate of the amount of extra food you'll be getting. Now, this is obviously substantial because it means you're going to be hitting the 5th age much faster than you otherwise would without this 5% bonus. So whilst it seems like a fairly insignificant amount, it actually adds up to a fairly large amount of food over time. Another fantastic thing about the port is that they get an extra explorer. Now, explorers in general are absolutely fantastic because with the capital upgrades, they can have over 3,000 HP. Now, to put that into perspective, an Imperial Musketeer without any other upgrades from the arsenal has a ranged attack of 48. Now, with the Explorer's 10% ranged resistance, this means that an Explorer is going to have to take 73 shots from Musketeer before he goes down. Now, for a unit that costs between 100 and 200 gold, that is an absolute steal because the shots that are going on your Explorer are not going on your more expensive precious units. Now, all European civilizations get access to one of these guys. Ports get access to two of them, so you would be absolutely insane to not be exploiting this as much as you can, because the cost effectiveness of Explorers blows my mind. On top of this, all European civilizations can send in an upgrade card for their Explorer, which also sends them a dog, which coincidentally also has 3,000 HP. So please, please, please use your Explorers and your dogs because they are insane. Another fantastic thing about the ports is they gain access to a card, which I'll show you later, that increases the range of their mortars. Now you might be thinking that mortars can already shoot really far, why would I want to increase the range? Typically what mortars are shooting are behind your opponent's army, which means their culverins, which specialize in ruining mortars' days, are easily able to shoot them. With the 8 increased range provided by this card, it makes it a lot more difficult for the enemy culverins to take out your mortars. The next great thing about the Portuguese is that their dragoons are amazing. Now, there's a couple cards that I'll be referencing a little bit later on in the deck overview, but take my word for it, the Portuguese dragoons are some of the best, if not the best, dragoons in the game. The final unique thing I want to cover about the Portuguese is they have a fantastic church tech that increases their mill gather rate by 20%. Now, with the base gather rate of No, don't worry, I'm actually not going to go into the math of this. Take my word for it, a civilization like the Portuguese, which is extremely food heavy, loves the fact they increase their food gather rate on meals by 20%. Before continuing with a Portuguese deck overview, I'd first like to take a look at a couple of unique units that the Portuguese have. The first of these is the Caçador, which is the Portuguese version of a skirmisher. Now you'll notice that the stats of a Caçador and a skirmisher are fairly different. A Caçador has 198 HP with an attack of 32, whilst the skirmisher has 240 HP and an attack value of 30. Now you'd be thinking, well, why would you want a Cassador? Surely a skirmisher is better. So much more health over a difference of 2 attack, how's that worth it? Or another really interesting point is the range resist of these units, where skirmisher has a 30% range resist, whilst a Cassador has 45. This basically reduces the damage taken from ranged attacks. So, if a Cassador attacks a skirmisher, their attack is effectively 22.4, which represents a 30% reduction from their initial value of 32. This effectively means that a Cassador can kill a skirmisher within 10.7 shots. On the other hand, if a skirmisher attacks a Cassador, they have an attack value of 16.5. This means that a skirmisher kills a Cassador in 12 shots. So based on those values alone, a Cassador is better than a skirmisher. But as soon as you start taking into consideration other units like cavalry and artillery, this equation goes completely out the window. Another important consideration is that a Cassador costs 80 food and 35 coin, whilst a skirmisher will typically cost 50 food and 65 coin. Now, whilst food is generally easier to obtain, this again starts to bring into question which of these units is more valuable. But I believe that is a discussion for another video. The second unique unit that the Portuguese have is obviously the organ gun. Now, the organ gun looks cool and sounds sexy, but it has some pretty considerable competition from the horse artillery. Now, the organ gun fires 6 shots, which deals a total of 342 damage, whilst the horse artillery fires 1 shot that deals a base amount of 218 damage. It's important to note that the horse artillery damage is multiplied by 3 times against infantry, which is typically what you should be using artillery for, which means it's actually doing 654 damage. Additionally, with the organ gun, it doesn't fire 1 shot, it fires 6, as just mentioned. This means it takes 6 times as long to fire the same shot that a horse artillery fires once, meaning your opponent has a lot longer to move a culverin into position to blast you dead. Additionally, the organ gun has less HP and gets a negative multiplier against basically every other unit under the sun. On top of this, the horse artillery is considerably faster when packed up, which makes it much easier to move around the battlefield. It is important to note that the organ gun is only 4 pop, costing 100 wood and 300 gold, whilst the horse artillery is 6 pop, costing 100 wood and 500 gold. However, I'd still much rather have 2 horse artilleries over 3 organ guns. So please, as cool as the organ guns are, please use horse artillery. Now that we've had a look at the unique units, let's take a look at a deck. So here's a typical treaty deck that the Portuguese would use. Now you'll recognize a number of cards that are shared with other European civilizations, but you'll also notice that there's a couple cards here that are unique to the Portuguese. So first we'll take a look at those, and then we'll look at a typical send order for cards. So as previously mentioned, the Portuguese gain access to an additional explorer. And as also previously mentioned, explorers can have up to 3000 HP, which makes them awesome tanks. So I'd highly recommend that you use this card and basically spam your explorers into the enemy lines to absorb firepower. Additionally, like other civilizations, you can send a dog, which like the explorers can have up to 3000 HP. It's important to note that the hit points upgrade in this card doesn't affect the 3000 value. So you're not actually going to get 1500 extra, you're actually only going to get a couple of hundred because it applies to the base value. Now you'll notice the 2 cards in age 3 and 4. These basically combine to make the Portuguese Dragoons some of the best, if not the best Dragoons in the game, because the plus 20% damage and HP in correlation with the increased range of their attacks, really allows them to effectively deal with problematic units like missionaries and daimyos and artillery, which is typically towards the back of the enemy's lines. Now you'll also notice the range finding card, and this is obviously the card that makes Port Morts hated by everyone. So this is obviously an essential card. So let's take a look at a typical send order for cards. So firstly, you want to be sending Economic Theory, as this increases the gather rate for literally everything. It's fantastic and affects every aspect of the game. After that, you want to be sending your second and third shipments for Refrigeration and Royal Mint in that order, as these cards increase the rate at which you gather from food and coin, which is obviously fantastic. After that, you want to be sending your factory cards, as they're a fantastic way to obtain additional resources. After that, you want to be sending your unique church tech. Now, as previously mentioned, the Portuguese have access to a tech that increases the gather rate from mills by 20%, although it also reduces the gather rate everything else by 5%. Now, at the time you send this home city card, you'll be starting to transition your villages from wood to food, and then you'll be wanting to send that unique church tech at the same time. After that, you'll want to be sending sustainable agriculture, because this further increases the rate at which your villages are able to gather from mills, which is obviously fantastic. And as previously mentioned, the Portuguese are extremely food heavy, so the more food you're able to obtain, the better. You'll then be sending the mercantilism card from the church, which gives you a fat stack of XP, which you'll be using to send textile mill, cigar roller, and rum distillery. All three of these cards increase the gather rate of coin from your estates. It's important to note that you shouldn't be sending your villages onto estates until these three cards have been sent, to ensure that you're efficiently gathering resources. After that, you should be sending Advanced Arsenal, because this card is absolutely essential for buffing up your military. We'll be taking a look at each of these individual upgrades later on. After that, it's really up to you. Personally, I generally like to send the 2P allies and my explorer, just to give me a little bit more of a buffer in the starting fight. It's really important to note with the 2P allies, like other native shipments, that they don't actually count towards pop space. So they're generally an extremely cost-effective method of increasing the amount of military units you have without increasing your population. Additionally, you want to be sending fencing school, riding school, and engineering school as soon as possible, because they obviously reduce the time it takes to build units. As previously mentioned, range finding is absolutely essential, but the matchup and the map will typically determine when you actually send this. If you're in a 1v1 or a smaller map, you'll typically want to send this earlier, because you will have an increased capacity to be attacking your opponent's forward base earlier than you otherwise would. Now here's a typical natives deck for the Portuguese, where this deck is exactly the same as the normal deck, apart from the cauldrons have been taken out and replaced with the native warriors, which obviously reduces the cost of natives. Now this is extremely important because natives generally cost wood, so reducing that overall cost will enable you to continually produce the units for a longer period of time. Now additionally, you have the water deck, which is obviously for when you're building fishing ships. Now there's three cards in here which you don't see in the typical Nourish 40 deck, which all revolve around increasing the rate at which you gather from whales and fish. But that pretty much sums it up for a Portuguese treaty deck. Now we're going to take a look at a boom. So obviously when you start, you'll be gathering all your resources, moving your explorer around. You'll notice the Portuguese explorer actually has an eyeglass, which allows them to reveal a small area of the map. It's a very useless ability, but does allow you to scout additional treasures, as well as uh,
Qual é a sua ordem? Correto. Sim,
as well as your opponent's base.
Caçador.
Vou escutar. Lenhadora. Olá.
So we're going to build
Construtor. Assalariado.
Olá. Assalariada.
a market and a house straight away. We're building the market because we want to get hunting dogs as soon as possible. What treasures do we have here? 40 food, more food.
Sim.
That's a shame. That's okay. We want to get hunting dogs
Qual é
because
o
it increases
assalariado?
the gather rates of food by 10%, which is obviously the
Qual é a
resource we
sua
need to
ordem?
be aging as well as building villages. So it's a win-win situation. So we want to get to 50 coin and 50 wood as soon as possible. Now we're going to start herding our hunts in here. Now if you don't know what herding is, I'd recommend you check out my
Sim, lenhadora.
my beginner's guide to treaty, which covers herding and a number of other useful topics. So I'm actually going to put our villagers onto food here.
Preparada.
And there we go. So we can get honey dogs now.
Sim.
What do we have? Useless. Very good. Now what we're trying to do right now is obviously get 800 food so we can age up. For Portuguese, you'll typically be sitting on 13 or 14 villages because you want to be aging as quickly as possible because as previously mentioned, every single age you get a free town center wagon, which is obviously fantastic because it means you're able to spam villager production a lot more than other civilizations. Now we're going to pick on Nourish 40 deck. Typically on this map, you'd pick gnats because there's gnats, but we're just going to keep it nice and simple. So we're going to pick the Economic Theory card straight away, which obviously increases the gather rate of all resources by 10%, which is fantastic. Now we're going to be using our eyeglass right now, which again is fairly useless, but it does reveal a little bit more of the map. But yeah, we're just going to be sitting on all our villages onto food here. And just looking to hit 800. So I think we're probably going to be going up on 13 villages because we found a couple of food treasures that gives an extra 80 food in total. We'll see how we go. We might be cancelling that vill. I think we probably will. That's unfortunate they ran that way. Yeah, we're going to cancel and go 13 vills here. So right now we're going to put villages on wood here. Basically to gather 75 wood so we can get placer mines, which increases the gather rate from mines by 10%, which is obviously fantastic. We're going to start herding this guys in. We're going to herd these guys in. And there might be a sneaky herd at the back of the base, which I hope we're going to find with our explorer now. Yeah, apart from that, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. There is one. Fantastic. So we're going to actually not use her. We use one of these guys to herd these guys a bit closer, because the closer they are to the TC, the less time it takes the villagers to get there and then back, which obviously increases the efficiency of those villages. Now, almost at 75 here, so we're about to move these guys off. Fantastic. Okay. And we'll keep herding our guys in here. Same for these ones. We'll look to grab these ones a bit later as well. We're going to chuck our TC around here, maybe. We'll start moving a couple of villages over onto coin. Now, if you're unsure about that eject trick, again, I'd suggest we have another hunt here, which is fantastic. Again, I'd actually chuck our villages on here, and then we'll put our town center. We'll probably just chuck it here, actually, so we can get close to this hunt as well. And we want to try and be getting our steel traps and amalgamation as soon as possible. Now we need a little bit more coin here. She's just chilling there, that's not good. Yeah, so now for the second age, or going to the third age, sorry, we obviously want to be getting 1.2k food, and that's miles away. That sucks. 1.2k food and 1k coin. So we're going to try and balance our resources here to make sure we get those resources at the same time where possible. We also have Gang Saw here, which we're not going to be getting just yet, but we'll be getting a bit later. I very nearly shot that guy the wrong direction. That would have been a disaster. And we can start moving these guys in as well. So we have our second TC up now, so we'll start queuing some more villages. And in the meantime, we're going to keep moving our Explorer around to try and find some more treasures which you can get. So this is a fantastic treasure we're going to get. 100 coin is a pretty big deal for us right now, because that gives us 10% of the coin we need. So we actually have a home city shipment here we're not going to be sending. So in the earlier part of this guide, we looked at the deck. We're going to be saving it for the refrigeration and Royal Mint cards, because right now, none of these cards really provide us any immediate value.
Vou fazer.
Also heading these guys in. So we're doing pretty well resource-wise. We're gonna put a few more people onto food here because we're about to get actually
Olá,
chuck some people
caçadora.
on.
Prepara. Vou executar.
Sim. Preparado.
Let's grab this
Sim.
treasure.
Correto. Sim. Qual é a sua ordem?
So notice with a blowgunner they have a range attack of 30 and a melee attack of 5. You basically just walk up to him and just whack him with your sword and he does basically 0 damage to you.
Correto.
Basically a free treasure guardian.
Olá.
It's worth keeping in mind when going for treasures.
Sim.
So I'm taking basically no damage and I'm
Sim.
slapping around real good in return. So we're doing very well for coin there, so we're going to transition a few more people back onto food just to make sure we have enough coming in. And again, we're saving for refrigeration and royal mint there. So it's going to be pretty close. Yeah, we'll let this. Yeah, that's fine. That was very close. So I'll look to age up as quickly as possible, and we'll make this the home city. That's very unfortunate I heard in that way. I should have been paying attention to that, but I wasn't. Use her to herd these guys in.
Sim, caçadora. Caçadora. Olá, caçadora. Caçadora.
Preparado.
I'll grab those in a second. We'll start herding these guys as well.
Correto.
You might have to use them. And you obviously want to have villagers queued up at all times, so having that brief period of downtime there is not good, because it might seem minimal, but all the small things add up to a pretty big difference overall. And so again, they're being herded this way, which is not a massive deal, because we're going to be putting these guys onto coin here. So now we'll send these two, and we'll put our TC up over this way. So I actually should have moved the waypoint over here, because that just wasted a couple seconds there.
Sim. Vou fazer. Caçadora. Caçadora.
So something else here you'll notice is that I actually can't build villages here because I've housed myself, and that's not ideal by any means. So I actually start herding these, so it should be fine.
Preparado. Vou linha assalariado.
Olá, caçadora.
So we have enough now,
Construtora.
so we can put people back to food here. So we're gonna miss out on a couple seconds here of building villages.
Qual é a sua ordem? Assalariada.
Live and learn, dude. Live and learn.
Sim. Qual é a sua ordem?
So the treasure in his base, we may as well grab that.
Sim.
Normally a player would have grabbed that by now, but we're versing an easy AI who are brain dead. So
Olá, vou
happy sometimes.
Caçadora.
if he doesn't take his treasure, I'm more than happy to oblige. Okay, so again, we're going to be looking for 2k food and 1.2k coin here.
Sim. Vou executar. Caçadora.
So I might have to rebalance a little bit here just to ensure we get that in time. So we just got another shipment and we'll be saving for the factory wagons. Yeah, so we stuffed up a little bit here, but live and learn, man, live and learn. It was pretty close, but it definitely could have been closer there. So age up with the coin shipment there. And we're going to have to put a couple people onto wood here just to make sure we don't house ourselves again, because that is less than ideal.
Preparado. Sim, caçador.
Vou fazer.
Olá. Sim.
And keep moving the explorer around just to try and find everything, but I'm pretty sure most of the treasures have been found. There might be one or two more. We might actually move people onto this one. We'll take some people off this one just to make sure we get enough food coming in, because it could become problematic. Make sure we don't shoot those bears, otherwise our villagers are going to be in for a bad day. Yes, obviously with the next stage we're going to be looking for 4k food and 4k coin, which is obviously a whole lot of resources.
Sim, caçador. Qual é? Vou isso. Vou caçador. Vou correto. Sim, caçador.
Yeah, so we've housed ourselves now, but by the time we go through all these villages, we'll have enough wood.
Correto.
Um,
Caçadora.
there you go. Oops.
Olá.
To build another house, and we'll keep these guys on wood, just to ensure that we're not going to house ourselves.
Construtor. Linhador.
And now we're going to be sending our factories. We'll put this as the home city
Sim,
recipient, and we'll chuck
Vou
you
executar.
approximately
Oh,
there.
sim,
We'll gather
vou
our
fazer.
coin, and there we go. We're fine. But that's the port boom is pretty simple.
Preparada? Qual é a sua ordem? Caçadora.
I
Preparado.
don't really want
Qual é
all
a
of you
sua
gathering
ordem?
that, but
Sim,
that's
vou fazer.
okay.
Caçador.
Qual é a sua
Vou
ordem?
isso. Caçador. Olá. Caçador. Sim. Qual é? Caçador.
Sim, vou
Could start
executar.
transitioning people
Caçador.
down
Caçadora.
here as
Sim,
well.
caçadora.
So our factory's about to arrive. So actually position down here,
Correto.
just to reduce the time it takes. So then we'll send our second one. And we can actually start taking people off here and put them onto
Preparado.
food.
Vou fazer. Caçador.
Sim,
Because we have a
caçadora.
whole lot of coin and not a lot of
Sim.
food.
Caçador. Olá. Prepara. Sim. Linhador. Caçador.
Chuck him on food, just to make sure we have enough coming in.
Qual é a assalariada?
And again, chuck it down here.
Sim. Vou executar.
Sim.
Qual é? Assalariado. Olá.
Qual é? Vou executar
Qual é
para
a
a
sua ordem?
lenhadora.
Olá. Linhador.
Chuck these people onto coin here. So a little bit over. So actually going to sell some food just to make sure we hit the cap. Start aging. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put people onto wood. Just to make sure that we are going to have enough
Qual é a
wood
sua
for the
ordem?
capital.
Lenhadora.
And the relevant upgrades off that as well. So we're obviously going to be getting the wood upgrade from the capital as soon as we age up, because most of our villages at that point will be on wood.
Prepara lenhadora.
Qual é? Linhador. Sim. Sim.
May as well grab this.
Qual é a sua linhador?
There we go. We're going to chuck some more villages
Qual
onto
é a sua ordem? Assalariada.
coin here. This is about to
Olá,
go, so we
assalariada.
can chuck these
Assalariada.
guys.
Qual é a lenhadora?
And we're housed again, but that's okay, because there's a whole lot of wood. We're actually going to put these to other resources, just to ensure that we get what we need, because we're running a little bit low on...
Vou caçadora.
Should be fine. But just to make sure we hit the 1k of each by the time we hit the 5th age here.
Prepara
Okay, I should put them
assalariado.
back on.
Sim.
So indecisive.
Preparado. Olá.
Move the capital as quickly as possible.
Linhador.
Prepara. Lenhadora. Sim, lenhadora.
And then we can start building our mills
Construtor.
Olá. Caçadora.
and our
Qual é a
church.
sua? Prepara linhador.
So we want to get that one first, and then we get our unique church deck, which is the one we're going to be using for the
Sim,
mills.
construtor. Correto.
Sim, correto. Olá. Construtora. Caçadora.
Olá. Vou correto. Vou fazer. Vou executar.
Get our upgrade. I'll actually chuck some more people on coin here, because we want to get our
Sim, assalariada.
the church tech that gives us the 2000 XP.
Qual é? Construtor. Construtor. Construtor.
So we're about to have our church deck come in.
Qual é a sua caçadora?
We're going to make sure we have enough
Sim,
food here to
caçadora.
keep producing villages, which is not ideal right now. So we're going to get our increased gather rate from mills. And we can start to look to transition people onto mills in a second. We need more houses here.
Construtor. Olá. Construtor. Linhador.
Make sure we don't house ourselves. So we can start to transition.
Qual é a sua
Sim,
ordem?
camponês.
Just chuck these people
Olá,
on straight now.
camponês.
Right away, sorry.
Sim. Camponês.
Sim. Preparada.
Where's that in that guy?
Preparada. Camponesa.
We can send it now. We can also get the agricultural increase, which obviously increases the gather rate of.
Construtor.
Chuck it there. We can also start producing.
Sim.
Start putting down our
Construtora.
plantations.
Construtora.
Chuck some more people on coin here.
Preparada. Sim. Lenhadora.
And we'll chuck our plantations down, or our estates, as they're now referred to, I guess. Just to get the upgrades before we start putting people on. Because we want to make sure we're gathering our resources as efficiently as possible. So now we're capped on villages, so I'm actually going to take a couple off there just so we're getting them as quickly as possible.
Lenhador.
We didn't get the market up. That was pretty bad of us. But yeah, you want to be trying to getting all of your upgrades as quickly as possible. We're going to chuck this back to wood now because we don't really need as much food coming in, and we have these guys to supplement our food income.
Qual
So
é
we're going to
a
be
sua ordem? Sim,
chucking
correto. Camponesa.
7 there,
Olá.
5,
Camponesa.
Qual é a
6
sua ordem?
there,
Sim.
2, 5.
Olá. Camponês.
It's not doing
Qual é a
anything.
sua ordem? Lenhadora. Lenhadora. Sim. Construtora. Construtora.
And now we can start getting estate upgrades.
Preparado.
Qual é? Lenhadora. Sim. Lenhadora.
Lenhador.
May as well get this now as well. And when we hit 1.5k coin, we'll go into our church and grab our mercantilism upgrade, which obviously gives us the fat stacks of experience. But now all our villages are out, which is great.
Lenhador.
But after we've put our mills and estates down, then it's pretty much just a case
Construtor.
of just waiting. Now you'll notice that I have 7 people on each mill, and this is explained in my beginner's guide to treaty. If you have more than that, they start bumping into each other, which reduces the rate at which they gather at, which is by no means ideal. So we'll get a mercantilism now. And after we've got these 2, then we can start transitioning people onto our estates. And generally you want about a 40-40 split on food and coin, and the rest on wood. But that'll change depending.
Sim. Sim.
Sim.
If you take these guys off here,
Lenhadora.
just put them on the trees, because we want to try and get rid of all these trees, which they will be, but because obviously the trees impede your ability to build your base and your forward base, where trees obstruct units and building construction, which is
Assalariado.
definitely not ideal.
Olá.
So we'll start transitioning people across now, because we're only missing 1 upgrade now. 6, 7, and again for estates you want to be putting 7 people per building.
Assalariada.
6, 7,
Sim.
7,
Assalariada.
Preparado.
and then we can build another estate if necessary.
Construtor.
Now a really important thing that a lot of new players don't
Lenhador.
do for whatever reason is building an arsenal, which gives a lot of fantastic upgrades for your units. I mentioned previously in the deck that the next thing we'll be sending is the advanced arsenal, which provides a whole lot of upgrades across the board for your military units. So we'll be taking a look at those when they come in. Obviously the default ones, they just buff your units, so we'll get all of these ones apart from this one. Because this one only increases damage versus ships, which you don't typically see in treaty, so it's generally just a waste of resources. So we're actually going to put another plantation down, and then we'll be good to go. Now, on maps that you actually get natives, so Andes is obviously a fantastic example of this, you generally want to have a higher amount of wood coming in than you otherwise would, because obviously the gnats, they cost wood, which is not generally applicable for every other unit outside of your artillery pieces and your forward base, of course. But now that we have all of our economic upgrades that we need, we can start getting other upgrades, like the outpost upgrade and the arsenal. So the next card we'll be sending is the advanced arsenal. So that'll give us a whole lot of extra tech in here, which increases the ability of our units. Now we may as well get these ones as well. And I guess just talking about the unique church tech for Portuguese, we obviously have the 20% buff to the mills, which is fantastic. You also have these two cards, which basically provide units. Now, you don't send these until you reach 200 of 200 population, because this basically allows you to overpop, which obviously provides you with a much better starting army, which allows you to have a bit more pressure in the first fight of the game. So we're about to have an advanced arsenal come in here. And you'll see that these are all absolutely fantastic upgrades, where they increase damage 15%, increase HP 10%, increase speed, that without these cards, you're seriously handicapping yourself. So again, you want everything apart from the heated shot, which is fairly irrelevant. Now, I'm actually going to get rid of the trees at the front of our base so we can actually start walling.
Olá, lenhadora.
And this is what I was talking about previously in the decks, where your explorers can have up to 3,000 HP. They're basically cards in the capital. There's two cards that cost food that massively increase their HP, which is obviously fantastic. So you should always be using your explorers at the front of your base, just as tank at the front of your army as a tank, basically. Another thing you see a lot of new players do is actually buy spies. Now, it's not really relevant in this case because my opponent is an easy bot and they built no units, but at this stage of the game, this will typically cost between 15, 30, 40,000 gold, which is a massive investment. Sure, you can see what your opponent's doing, but it is much better to use that gold for units. So please do not buy spies, please. Just going to see where the outside of our base is here. So it's actually very close to the trade line. So we can turn the camera around. To do this, you basically go to settings, options, game options. You turn on camera rotation, and you can press Control and the arrow keys, and you can move them. It's pretty helpful at the start of a fight. It just allows you to, I guess, get a better understanding of what your opponent's doing and what you are doing. So we're going to be building our buildings now. So we'll build it with one wall. So I generally like to do a split of 4 barracks, a foundry, stable, but other people have different things I like to do. Now, typically in this case, I would be going Nats, we would be fighting here, but just for the purposes of this video, which is more of a beginner guide to port, I won't be doing that. But generally, you'll be going for Nats in this case. But don't worry about that for now. But now that we have all our economic upgrades, now we'll be getting like the military upgrades. So generally you want to be getting obviously your musketeer, your castador, which is the port skirm, and then obviously the foundry and the stable upgrades. So we're not going to be putting stuff here until we actually get enough room. So I'll actually put that there before we get rid of these, and then put another one here, and then put the stables behind. So just to make sure we have enough room to actually get your units out, where they're all clumped together. It makes it very difficult for actually getting units out there. And again, if you're playing Nats, you'll get this card because it adds a 50% HP and damage, which is obviously massive. Additionally, you'll be wanting to get this anyway because of your Tupi, which is a card you should be routinely using in your deck, because again, it just buffs them pretty crazily. So yeah, we want to be getting the culverin, the mortar, and the horse artillery. As previously mentioned, the organ gun, whilst it's cute, that's the thing, it's cute, it's not particularly useful when compared to the horse artillery. It's just inferior. It's slower, it has less kill potential. Sure, it costs a little bit less in terms of population and resources, but it's so much more worth getting a horse artillery over an organ gun. So we'll start putting down our wall now. So unfortunately, the trees are going to be our enemy here, but they usually are. So we'll chuck one wall in front. And again, if you're wondering why I'm doing this in 2 segment walls, I'd recommend checking out my walling guide, which talks about why you should be walling like this. But you can do that, basically. So we'll just look to get rid of all our trees here. So we have 13 minutes. It's obviously a good idea to keep track of the clock. I don't really want her to be doing that. That's this dude's job. Just so you know how much time you have to be building your army. and then also setting up the front line as well. So get rid of this tree, and then we can build our stables. So during all this time, I just take a look at resources, and especially if I was on nets, I'd typically put some villages that were on food onto wood, just to make sure I had enough wood going into post 40 to ensure that I'm able to, I guess, constantly produce units. Because we still have all the upgrades for the stables as well, which is obviously the two different upgrades for the hussars and the djinns or the dragoons. And after I was on that, I'll get them to start walling off as well on the inside here. I also built the outpost here, which is obviously not in a very good position, but I did that to get the upgrades before the round started, before the Rush 40 started. Where after the treaty ends, you generally want to be building a forward base. It's not so relevant in this case because it's a 1v1, so there's not much space between me and his initial base, but you want to be building outpost walls and military buildings. So we start getting our upgrades on these guys, and I'll get him to re-wall. Like so. Nice and simple. Apart from these trees that are in the way, but we'll just go around them. And after this, these trees have been knocked down, I'll put the other stables here. So you want to make all of these into gates just so we have enough, so we're not stopping our units from getting out. Because obviously sometimes the AI gets a little bit wacky and they do weird things, so you just want to give them as much room as possible. You will send the 2P and then the Explorer, just to give ourselves a bit more of an edge at the starting fight. I'll sneak it in here. Yeah. I can't even select this tree. Okay. Let's wait till they go AFK. Or idle, rather. You see me here putting all the barracks and stuff into control groups. Again, I explained that in my Beginner's Guide to Treaty, so if you don't understand why I'm doing that, I'd recommend you check out that video. Then we start building our army. So in pretty much every situation, I'll go must cast 6 culverins and 2 horse artillery. In a situation like this where it's a 1v1, it would even be worth going, what are they called? Mortars as well, just because you can attack their base straight away. And depending on the matchup as well, so for example, against Spain where they have missionaries, or against Japan where they have daimyos, I might chuck in some dragoons as well, just to give me a little bit more capacity to kill those units. Because obviously dragoons are fantastic at killing cavalry units like daimyos and missionaries. But just saying, it's a normal game. This is what I'll typically do. I'll go 20 Huss, 25 Musk, 3 Culves, 2 horse artillery. And now you'll notice that I've hit the population cap of 200 of 200. But if you remember previously, I mentioned that you send these guys after you hit the 200 pop cap. Oh, we don't actually have enough. 200 more. And basically, when these are sent, they basically allow you to overpop, which, as previously mentioned, is a fantastic way of having a little more pressure in the starting fight. And we'll also send all of our militiamen. Now, these guys do lose health over time, but you just make a line of them at the start of or in front of your army, and it just allows you to absorb the first round of fire from people.
Sim, vou fazer. Sim, sim.
It also helps to put these guys into stagger mode because it increases the distance between them, which basically reduces their capacity to get killed by cannon fire.
Sim.
It spreads them out a little bit more. Now we actually don't have a whole lot of space here to have a start army. The walls are a bit in the way in the buildings, but that's okay.
Qual é a
Oops.
lenhadora?
Qual é a sua ordem?
So I'll get him to do another wall. Ideally, we'd like to typically do between, ideally 4 walls. But again, it depends on the map. Sometimes you're very much limited to doing maybe even 1, depending on how bad the map is. But generally, you want to do between 3, 4, maybe 5 walls, depending on how much space and time you have. Send our explorer now. And now we can start actually laying out our army. So at the very front, we want to have our militiamen, because as previously mentioned, they are the cannon fodder, as it were.
Vou fazer sim. Vou executar. Correto.
Preparado. Sim, preparado.
Guys out of the
Vou
way.
executar.
Vou fazer. Vou executar. Olá. Vou fazer.
So it generally helps to take a little bit of time just setting up your army, rather than just having big blobs of units everywhere.
Sim, preparado. Correto. Sim, vou executar. Vou fazer. Sim, correto. Preparado. Vou executar. Vou fazer. Vou executar. Sim, vou executar. Sim. Olá. Sim, vou fazer.
Sim.
Olá. Sim,
Another
sim.
explorer
Vou
arriving.
fazer. Sim, sim. Vou fazer. Preparado. Sim, sim. Qual é a sua? Correto. Sim. Vou executar. Olá. Sim. Sim, correto. Preparado. Vou executar. Sim, vou fazer. Qual é? Vou executar. Vou executar. Sim, vou fazer.
Sim, eu vou.
Qual é a sua ordem? Correto.
Okay.
Correto.
Sim, vou fazer. Qual é? Correto. Preparar. Sim. Olá. Sim.
I'll then generally position the musketeers behind them.
Vou fazer.
That is acted as a bit of a meat shield for the crossbows and the tupi, which obviously have a bit lower health.
Sim, vou fazer. Preparado. Qual é? Sim, vou fazer. Sim. Sim, qual é? Vou fazer. Sim, vou executar. Vou executar. Vou executar.
And then you put the tupi and the crossbows behind these guys, basically. And we'll chuck our explorers at the front, because as I mentioned before, they are those juicy 3000 HP meat shields. And when we eventually send our dog as well, that'll be another 3000 meat shield.
Vou fazer. Vou executar.
Get that away for a second, and then we'll start moving these guys in as well.
Vou fazer. Sim, vou executar. Preparar. Qual é? Vou fazer. Sim. Sim, vou fazer.
Like so.
Qual é? Sim, vou executar. Vou fazer. Sim, vou executar. Vou executar. Qual é? Vou fazer. Sim, vou fazer. Vou executar.
Now we should hit around 2.1, maybe. Yeah, we definitely made some mistakes earlier. That's just how it goes sometimes.
Preparar a sua ordem.
The learning experience. Oh god, how long were they at? Okay.
Lenhadora.
Says he makes mistakes. He has 15 idle villagers for who knows how long. Not ideal. So we'll put some more walls down, and we'll upgrade them a little bit later, because obviously when you upgrade them, it not only increases the health, but it also increases the time it takes to build them. So the longer your villager is obviously spending building walls, the less time they are spending gathering resources. So we have one more idle. Well, actually, we have a lot of
Camponesa.
our 2P just chilling in the base. Not ideal.
Qual é a sua ordem?
And generally I'll put our black riders on, just pretend that outpost isn't there. I'll generally put the black riders on the outside, just to help to prevent
Sim, vou fazer. Preparar a sua ordem.
enemy cavalry units from running around and killing my artillery, which obviously does not like artillery very much. So I'm putting my culverins on hotkeys as well, which again, if you don't understand that, I recommend checking out my video, my beginner guide to treaty. And then again, we'll put Huss on the outside, just to go and flank attack people at the start.
Qual é a sua ordem?
Where did I put my 2P? Oh, they can't even get out. Just chilling.
Seguatavo. Tape.
Is he even building the wall? Excellent, he's not building the wall. Love that. Might as well upgrade now, it's only 2 minutes to go.
Seguatavo. Seguatavo. Tape. Sim,
Nope.
vou fazer. Seguatavo. Tape. Seguatavo. Tape. Tape.
But that's pretty much it. Port a fairly easy a fairly easy boom. So if you're new to the game, I'd highly recommend picking them up. They're a fairly intuitive civilization to play, and have some fairly strong units. Also, the fact that they have their mortars and their explorers, just a really unique aspect about them that make versing them extremely annoying. So we'll just see what score we hit here. I imagine it's going to be 2.15 maybe, or thereabouts. But yeah, we have a hole in the wood than I intended to get. But that's okay, we'll pretend we're actually doing that this time. But yeah, I imagine I'm not going to struggle too much against my opposition right now, but he's an easy bot, so you'd hope so. I won't bother showing you the fight because it's not going to be that interesting. I'm just going to steamroll him. But yeah, looks like we hit 2.17, 2.2 maybe. That pretty much sums up for the Portuguese. I guess today we've had a look at the various unique advantages of the civilization. We've had a look at a couple of decks that you could typically use, and then we've gone and had a look at the boom itself. If you have any further questions regarding how to play Portuguese or any other civilization, feel free to ask in the comments below, or come and check me out on my Twitch, which is linked in the description. Yeah, it looks like we're hit 2.2, which is fantastic. But yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day/night. And nice, we hit 2.2. And I'll catch you again another time. So yeah, I'll just wait for this to time out, and that's pretty much it. So I hope you've learned a thing or two from this guide, and you can use it to empower your ability to play. Oh god, empower your ability to play the Portuguese. Thank you for watching. Bye.